Disclaimer: this program contains graphic descriptions of real crimes. Viewer discretion is advised. All parties are presumed innocent until proven guilty in court. I didn't know it would be the last thing I ever said to him. I didn't know a football game would turn our home into a crime scene, and I didn't know that when I told my son to run, someone in this house was about to die. The house was quiet in the way homes are quiet just days before Christmas. Lights glowed softly, presents sat hidden. Outside, nothing looked broken. Inside, Jason Kenney was drinking and watching Monday Night Football. His team was winning. The 49ers were dominating. The mood should have been good. But alcohol has a way of sharpening tempers instead of softening them, and by the end of the game, something shifted. I asked him to change the channel. Just that. The room changed instantly. His voice got louder. His words got sharper, and suddenly, this wasn't about a television anymore. The argument escalated fast, too fast. I could feel it in my chest, that heavy pressure that tells you danger is close. That's when I looked at my son. He was only 12. Run. I told him, go to the neighbor's house. Call 911. He hesitated, confused, scared. I screamed at him to go. As he ran out the door, I turned back toward my husband, and in that moment, I saw something in his eyes I had never seen before. Then the gun went off, one shot, loud, final, and in that instant our family was destroyed. The gunshot echoed through the house, louder than any shout we had just exchanged. Time froze, then shattered. I fell to the floor before I even understood what had happened. There was no pain at first, just shock, just silence where my thoughts should have been. Jason didn't stop. He turned and walked down the hallway, the sound of his footsteps calm. Deliberate, not rushed, not panicked. In the bedroom, my daughter was sitting on her bed, 13 years old, barely old enough to understand fear, yet she felt it instantly. He raised the gun. I begged him. She would later say, "Don't shoot me, don't shoot me, don't shoot me." The first bullet hit her shoulder. She screamed. The second bullet hit her face. She collapsed, blood pooling beneath her, the room spinning into darkness. Jason stood over her, believing she was dead, but she wasn't. In another room, the baby slept quietly in a crib, untouched, unaware, alive. The contrast was unbearable. Jason didn't check on anyone. He didn't call for help. He didn't look back. He walked out of the house and disappeared into the night, leaving behind a dead wife, a dying child, and a family that would never be whole again. By the time deputies arrived, the house no longer felt like a home. It felt cold, silent, wrong. They found my body first, shot in the head, lying where I fell. There was nothing they could do. Then they moved down the hallway. In the bedroom, they found my daughter. She was covered in blood, barely breathing, but still alive. A bullet had torn through her face, exiting through the top of her head. Against every odd, she was conscious. Paramedics rushed her out of the house, lights flashing, sirens screaming into the night. Doctors would later call it a miracle. Outside, my son stood at the neighbor's house, shaking as he spoke to 911. He had done exactly what I told him to do. He had survived, but the man who caused all of this was gone. Jason Kenney had already fled, and as he drove away, he knew exactly what he had done. He picked up his phone and made one call to his sister. "I did something very, very bad," he said. "You'll see me on the news. I'm not going to jail. I'm not going to prison for the rest of my life." That call wasn't a confession, it was a farewell, and by then, deputies were already searching for him, racing against a clock that was quickly running out. Jason didn't run far. He drove with purpose, not panic. Deputies tracked him to his late father's property in Lake Wales, a quiet place, empty, isolated. When he arrived, he didn't go into the house. He went straight to a shed out back and locked himself inside. By the time law enforcement surrounded the property, Jason was already finished running. They called out to him. They ordered him to surrender. There was no response. Inside that shed, Jason was alone with his thoughts, the gun, the silence, and the reality of what he had done. He had already told his sister he would never go to prison. He meant it. A single gunshot broke the stillness. When deputies finally made entry, it was over. Jason Kenney was dead from a gunshot wound to the head. No arrest, no trial, no justice in a courtroom. Just another ending written in blood. But back at the house, investigators were about to find something that proved this tragedy didn't start that night. While deputies cleared the scene in Lake Wales, investigators returned to the house in Lakeland. They weren't just looking for evidence. They were looking for answers. That's when they found it, a note. Not hidden, not folded away, left out in the open as if it was meant to be seen. Crystal had written it earlier, long before the gunshots. Her words were calm but desperate. She warned Jason about his drinking, about using cocaine again, about how their family was slipping into something dark. This is not how a family should live. She wrote, "You need God." It wasn't anger on the page. It was fear and exhaustion. That note changed everything. This wasn't a sudden explosion over a football game. This was a crisis that had been growing quietly behind closed doors. And the deeper investigators looked, the clearer it became Jason Kenney had been telling the world what was happening inside his mind. Long before he ever picked up the gun, investigators turned to Jason's social media. What they found was unsettling. At first glance, it looked normal. Posts about family, photos of smiles, messages filled with faith and love. A year earlier, Jason had praised Crystal publicly. He called her his best friend, the best mother he knew, a woman raising children with godly values. It painted the picture of a devoted husband, but as detectives scrolled forward, the tone began to change. On the very day of the murders, December 22nd, just hours before the argument ever started, Jason posted something chilling. He warned of spiritual warfare. "Satan wants your wife." He wrote, "If a man doesn't lead his family, Satan will." A heart emoji followed the words. 2 hours later, his mood shifted again. He posted joking about the 49ers playing that night, excited for the game. By the time the final whistle blew, the man behind those posts was drunk, angry, and armed. What looked like love on the surface was unraveling underneath, and the signs were there hidden in plain sight, waiting for a tragedy no one stopped in time. To investigators, the picture was finally coming into focus. This wasn't one bad night. This was pressure building over time: alcohol, drug use, untreated mental health issues, and a growing obsession with control and blame. The football game wasn't the cause. It was the excuse. Inside that house, fear had already taken root. Crystal's note proved she knew something was wrong. Jason's posts showed a man slipping deeper into paranoia, masking it as faith. When the argument started, there was no space left for reason. Only rage. For the children, the damage was already permanent. The 13-year-old girl survived, but her injuries would change her life forever. The 12-year-old boy would carry the sound of that gunshot in his memory for the rest of his life. And the baby, too young to understand, would grow up without a mother. Jason Kenney chose his ending in that shed, but the people he left behind didn't get a choice. And long after the sirens faded, one truth remained: the warning signs were there, long before the trigger was pulled. In the end, there was no courtroom, no verdict read aloud, no sentence handed down. Jason Kenney never faced the people he destroyed. He never answered for the fear he caused or the lives he shattered. All that remained were questions. Could this have been stopped? Would someone have listened if the signs had been taken seriously? If the drinking, the drugs, the threats masked as faith had been confronted sooner? For Crystal, there were no second chances. Her life ended on a living room floor just days before Christmas. For her daughter, survival came at a cost, a scar that would never fade, and a memory she could never escape. For her son, bravery saved his life, a child forced to make an adult decision in a moment of terror. This wasn't just a story about violence. It was a story about silence, about warnings ignored, and about how quickly an ordinary night can become a nightmare. Because sometimes tragedy doesn't arrive screaming. Sometimes it starts quietly on a Monday night with a football game. After the headlines faded, the house went quiet again. Not the peaceful kind of quiet, but the heavy kind filled with absence. Investigators closed the case, but the community was left to process the loss. Neighbors struggled to understand how something so violent could happen so close to home. Friends looked back at old photos, old posts, old smiles, searching for signs they missed. Crystal was remembered as a devoted mother, someone who tried to hold her family together, even as it was breaking apart. Her note became a haunting reminder of how long she had been carrying the weight alone. The children were placed on a long road of healing, counseling, surgeries, questions no child should ever have to ask, and Jason Kenney became a name attached to a single night defined not by who he claimed to be, but by what he ultimately did. A life lost, a family shattered, a tragedy that could never be undone. And the truth remained: the most dangerous moments don't always look dangerous at first. In the weeks that followed, investigators pieced together every detail of that night. Every post, every note, every call, each one a thread in the story of a family unraveling. They discovered a pattern that had gone unnoticed: the spikes of anger, the hints of paranoia, the obsession with control. A man who seemed loving online and violent behind closed doors. Jason Kenney's final hours were a culmination, not a beginning. The Monday night argument didn't create the monster, it revealed him. For the surviving daughter, every Christmas after would carry a shadow. For the son, every quiet moment could trigger memory of the night he ran for his life. And for the community, it was a grim reminder of how quickly domestic life can turn deadly. It was a tragedy wrapped in warning signs. A story that begged the question, could anyone have stopped it? The answer would haunt everyone left behind, because sometimes the warning signs are there, but the world is too slow to notice them. The aftermath was surreal. A house once filled with laughter and the scent of Christmas cookies was now a crime scene. Officers combed through every room, every closet, every corner, searching for evidence, answers, closure. Crystal's note sat as a silent witness, a reminder that someone had tried to stop it. Her warnings had been clear, her fear had been real, and yet no one acted in time. Social media posts painted a chilling picture of a man at war with himself. A man who could post love and devotion in the morning and post threats of spiritual warfare hours before committing murder. Friends and family were left with questions that would never be answered. How did it get this far? Could the alcohol, the drugs, the mental instability have been recognized sooner? Was there anything they could have done to prevent this? For the children, life became a daily struggle to rebuild trust, safety, and normalcy. For law enforcement, it was a case that tested every protocol, every training, and every instinct. And for the world watching from the outside, it was a reminder that darkness often hides behind the most ordinary of walls, and that sometimes the people we think we know best can become the people we fear most. The story didn't end with Jason Kenney's death. It didn't end with the news cameras leaving or the headlines fading from screens. It ended with the echoes of a family forever changed. A daughter who survived against all odds, carrying both physical and emotional scars. A son who would never forget the night he ran for his life. A mother gone, but remembered in every quiet corner of that home she tried to protect. The note she left behind, the posts he made, the warnings ignored, they all became part of the record. A chilling reminder that tragedy often builds slowly, quietly, until one moment ignites everything. For the survivors, life would never be the same. For the community, it was a wake-up call about the hidden dangers of domestic violence, mental illness, and unchecked rage. And for anyone listening to this story, the lesson is clear. Pay attention to the warning signs. Listen to the cries for help, even when they're silent, because once the gun is fired, once the line is crossed, there's no turning back. Sometimes, the worst horrors are the ones that could have been prevented. And in Lakeland, Florida, just days before Christmas, the unthinkable became reality. Even after the tragedy, questions lingered. Neighbors, friends, and family kept asking, how did it come to this? How could a man who once wrote of love and devotion end his night in blood and despair? The answer wasn't simple. It was alcohol and drugs, yes, but also fear, paranoia, and untreated mental illness. It was the small, silent warnings that went unnoticed, the note Crystal left, the posts Jason made, the arguments that escalated too often, too quickly. For the children, healing would be measured in years, not days. For the community, the story became a grim reminder. Even in ordinary homes, ordinary nights, darkness can hide. And while Jason Kenney would never face justice in a courtroom, the world could see the truth of his actions. The horror he left behind could not be erased, because sometimes the most terrifying stories aren't in horror movies. They happen in living rooms, in homes, in families, and they remind us that tragedy doesn't strike randomly. It grows quietly, patiently, until it finally explodes. In Lakeland, Florida, that explosion happened just days before Christmas, and for one family, the world would never be the same. Even now, the house stands as a silent witness to that night. Empty rooms that once held laughter now echo with memory. The Christmas decorations, the gifts, the warmth of family, gone in an instant. Investigators close the case, but the story never truly ends, because the impact of Jason Kenney's actions will ripple through time. A daughter who survived will remember every sound, every shadow, every plea. A son who ran for his life will carry that fear forever. Crystal's voice, frozen in her final words, still speaks. I begged him, don't shoot me, don't shoot me, don't shoot me. Her warning, her love, her fight, they remain a testament to the fragility of life and the consequences of unchecked rage. And for the rest of us, it is a warning too, that behind closed doors, ordinary moments can hide extraordinary danger. That sometimes the signs are right in front of us, and the cost of ignoring them can be deadly. In the quiet of that Lakeland home, we are reminded, tragedy doesn't wait for permission. It arrives suddenly, relentlessly, and forever changes everyone in its path. The story of that night doesn't belong only to the news, or the police reports, or the social media posts. It belongs to the lives it shattered. The daughter, now surviving against impossible odds, will carry both the pain and the miracle of that night. The son, who ran through the dark to safety, will always remember the fear, the urgency, the weight of responsibility he never should have had. And the memory of Crystal gone too soon lingers in every corner of the home she tried to protect. Jason Kenney's actions left scars that no investigation can erase. No note, no post, no social media warning could undo the destruction that unfolded in minutes. Yet in the darkness, there is a reminder. The warnings were there. The cries for help were visible. The signs were written in ink, typed online, whispered in arguments, and left in plain sight. This story is a warning, a lesson, a chilling reminder that ordinary nights, ordinary arguments, and ordinary homes can hide unspeakable danger. And sometimes the most terrifying tragedies are the ones that could have been prevented if only someone had seen the signs, listened to the warnings, and acted before it was too late. Years from that night, the memories linger like shadows. For the children, the trauma isn't measured in days or months. It's a lifetime. The daughter survives, but every reflection in a mirror reminds her of the moment a bullet tore through her face. Every loud noise, every sudden movement echoes that night in Lakeland. The son carries the weight of fear and survival. The instinct that saved him at 12 will never leave him. He will always remember the hallway, the gunshot, and the terror that forced him to run. And the home itself, once filled with warmth, laughter, and the hope of Christmas, stands as a reminder of what happens when warning signs are ignored. The note Crystal left, the posts Jason made, the subtle signs of a man unraveling, they were all there. All visible, all ignored. This is not just a story about murder. It's a story about silence, about missed opportunities, about how quickly love can turn to violence when anger, addiction, and unchecked demons take control. And for those who hear this story now, let it serve as a reminder. The danger isn't always obvious, but it's always there waiting for the moment when it can no longer be contained. In Lakeland, Florida, just days before Christmas, a family was destroyed, and the world watched the warning signs go unheeded. Even now, the echoes of that night ripple far beyond the walls of the Kenny home. Friends, neighbors, and the community struggle with the same question. How could this happen? It wasn't sudden. It wasn't only a football game or a single argument. It was months, maybe years, of warning signs, of anger simmering beneath the surface, of substance abuse, and of a mind unraveling in private. Jason Kenny's social media posts, his words online, his actions at home, they told a story. A story of control, obsession, and paranoia. A story ignored until it erupted in violence. For the survivors, life will always be measured in before and after. Before the gun, before the night, before the terror. And after the day the world they knew vanished, Crystal's final words, her pleas, her warnings, they are a haunting testament to courage in the face of danger. I begged him, don't shoot me. Those words are frozen in time. A reminder that sometimes, even in the face of obvious danger, there is little one person can do to stop what is coming. And for everyone who hears this story, the lesson is clear. Pay attention to the signs. Listen to the warnings, because sometimes the unthinkable is already in motion long before the first shot is fired. In the aftermath, the world tried to make sense of it. News crews covered the story. Neighbors whispered in disbelief. Family and friends struggled with grief, guilt, and anger, but the truth was already written long before the gun was ever raised. Crystal's note, left in plain sight, was a cry for help. Jason Kenny's posts were warnings, scattered across time and screens, and yet no one acted in time. The children, now survivors of a nightmare, would carry the weight forever. The daughter, with her scar and her courage, a living reminder of both horror and resilience. The son, who ran through the dark to safety, a reminder that even in terror, instinct can save a life. And the house, the quiet home that once promised family and warmth, became a monument to tragedy. This was more than a story about murder. It was a story about warning signs ignored, about the quiet buildup of anger, addiction, and mental illness, about how one ordinary Monday night with a football game on TV turned into something unimaginable. Because sometimes the most devastating violence doesn't start with a scream. It starts with a look, a word, a warning no one listens to until it's too late. Even with Jason Kenny gone, the questions remained. No trial, no sentence, no justice in a courtroom, only survivors left to pick up the pieces of a life ripped apart in minutes. The daughter survived, but she survived with scars that would never fade, both physical and emotional. The son survived, but he survived with memories no child should carry. The baby survived, unaware of the terror that had almost consumed the family. Crystal's final act, telling her son to run, was an act of courage that saved a life. Her note, her warnings, her words, they became a haunting testament to how long she had known danger was coming. And the community, they were left to wonder how so many signs could go unnoticed, how a loving father, a devoted husband in public, could unravel so completely in private. This story is a warning, a chilling reminder that domestic violence, substance abuse, and untreated mental illness can collide in the worst possible way. The tragedy in Lakeland, Florida, just days before Christmas, shows us all that sometimes the unthinkable doesn't happen out of nowhere. It builds quietly, patiently, until one moment ignites everything, and when it does, nothing will ever be the same. Even now, the night of December 22nd in Lakeland, Florida, remains etched in memory. The sounds, the screams, the gunshots, they linger for those who survived. Investigators pieced together every detail, every note, every post, every call. It painted a portrait of a man unraveling and a family trapped in the eye of the storm. Jason Kinney's actions left a mark no one can erase. A mother lost, a daughter scarred, a son forever carrying the weight of fear. The warning signs were all there. Cries for help, online posts, a note left in plain sight. But no one could stop what happened that night. And for the rest of us, the lesson is simple and terrifying. Pay attention, listen, watch, because the most dangerous tragedies often start quietly in ordinary homes on ordinary nights. And sometimes it only takes a few minutes for a family to be destroyed forever. In Lakeland, just days before Christmas, that ordinary night became a nightmare, and for one family, nothing would ever be the same again. Even after the case was officially closed, the story didn't end. It continued in the lives of the survivors, in the questions left unanswered, in the grief that would never fully heal. The daughter who survived faced surgeries, therapy, and the haunting memory of that gunshot. The son who ran for his life carried the weight of fear and responsibility no child should bear, and the baby, too young to remember, would grow up in the shadow of what happened that night. Crystal's note remained a silent witness to the truth. She had tried to warn, to protect, to prevent the unimaginable. Her pleas were ignored, and her family paid the ultimate price. Jason Kinney's posts and behavior revealed a man unraveling, a danger visible to anyone who cared to look. But in the end, those warnings were missed, leaving only devastation in their wake. This is a story about more than murder. It's about the fragility of safety, about how quickly ordinary moments can spiral into horror, about how the signs are often there if only someone sees them in time. And in Lakeland, Florida, just days before Christmas, the world learned a painful truth. Sometimes tragedy doesn't wait for permission. It arrives unannounced and leaves nothing the same. Even now, the house in Lakeland remains a silent monument to that night. The memories linger in empty rooms, in the scars of a surviving daughter, in the quiet of a son who ran for his life. The Christmas that should have been filled with laughter, warmth, and joy was replaced with sirens, fear, and grief. Crystal's final act, telling her son to run, saved a life. Her note, left in plain sight, was a desperate cry for help that went unanswered. Jason Kinney's social media posts, once filled with love, faith, and devotion, revealed a man unraveling into paranoia, anger, and violence. A single argument over a football game became the trigger for a tragedy years in the making. A mother dead, a daughter fighting for life, a son scarred forever, and a baby spared by mere chance. This story is a reminder that domestic violence, substance abuse, and untreated mental health issues are often hidden behind ordinary walls. The warning signs are there, but if they're ignored, the consequences can be devastating. And so, in Lakeland, Florida, just days before Christmas, a family was destroyed, a community shocked, and the world reminded that tragedy can arrive silently and without warning. If there's one thing this story teaches us, it's that the signs are often right in front of us, if we're willing to see them. Domestic violence and mental health struggles don't announce themselves. They escalate quietly until one moment changes everything. For more stories like this, stories that reveal the darkness behind closed doors, the mysteries of human behavior, and the tragedies that could have been prevented, subscribe to Murder Book 360, because understanding the past is the first step to preventing the next. I'm Chris Stewart. Thanks for listening. Stay aware, stay vigilant, and never ignore the warning signs.